Well, first of all, Chris, the plan is alive and well, and there's no way that we're going to leave Washington without taking care of the emergency needs of our people. And that's all over our country, in my state of West Virginia, too. They're all hurting everywhere.
So they're telling us that they're going to get COVID relief out there. I don't know if that's going to happen, which is just a total failure on the part of our elected officials. Nancy Pelosi, the Democrats, the one who've been blocking it for months. But I mean, come on now. You know, we've got a inauguration day coming up here. You got a new administration likely to be in charge very soon. Can we please do what is necessary to help the American people right now during this pandemic? Can we just get something here out to people who have had their businesses shut down, who have been told that they have no choice in the matter, and now they can't pay their bills, and now they're perhaps either living on credit or they've run out of whatever savings they've had. They've had to lay off employees, and this is because of government mandates, not because of the market. It's not because of a downturn, or this is the government saying, and I think unnecessarily saying, your restaurant, your bar cannot be open anymore. You know, isn't it remarkable? We have all these restrictions that are put in place at different times, but then when cases go up, it's like we are the game all of a sudden is, okay, cases have gone up and all the stuff that we were doing was apparently not enough. Well, then how well could it possibly have been working? I never get an answer from anybody on this one. But if we're masking and social distancing and limiting the number of people in these establishments, we're doing all those things, then case number in general, not even from that place or from that industry, goes up. They say, sorry, we got to lock it down anyway. So is that an admission that all those other things don't really work? What does work mean? If it's a 5% reduction in transmission for all that crap, is it still worth it? Or is it more like a 50% reduction? They have no idea. We're making decisions all the time that they say are based on data. I mean, I can tell you this. If I had the opportunity to question Dr. Fauci, if I got to sit in a senator's chair for a second or sit as a member of Congress, and they could just give me as their proxy, let me question Dr. Fauci, the whole thing would fall apart. You realize what a preposterous and absurd situation we're all in now with these people who keep saying that it's the data. And then you ask them and you find out there's no data behind this. They have no idea. They're just making it up as they go along. A lot of it. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of cases and a lot of deaths right now. There's that data. But in terms of the transmission risk, in terms of the reduction you get from these different choices, absolutely not. I have no idea. Now we have to talk about a little bit more of this, the legal challenges to the election. Because I don't want to avoid this. First of all, I don't understand how anyone could see this as anything other than the system operating all within the guidelines, the rules, the constitutional limitations and demands here. Everything is proceeding exactly on schedule. There's nothing the Trump team or anyone in favor of Trump has done that is a break in the rules. There's no abuse in power here. They're saying that they have legal theories that go into a very complicated, very difficult year here in what's going on with the law, and they're bringing these challenges. And for some reason, Republicans like Chris Christie seem to be out there getting ahead of all this as if we need to hear from them right now. As if they have to be smug and dismissive about all of this. I mean, here he is playing 9.
This is why I think the Republican Party will move on and move on briskly after the inauguration, because there's a lot of good things to move on from. You know, picked up 14 seats in the House, appears, I think, to only lose 1 seat in the Senate ultimately and keep control, flip 2 state legislatures, flip the only governorship that was flipped on election night. Except for the very top of the ticket, the Republican Party had a great night on election night. Now, I'll say to you, I was disappointed that the president lost, and I understand the disappointment in the party among some people people for losing that election. But we need to face the facts. Elections have consequences. And in the same way Democrats were horribly disappointed by Donald Trump's victory 4 years ago over Hillary Clinton in what was actually a closer election than this one from a popular vote perspective, and the same margin from an electoral college perspective, Republicans now need to say, thank you, Mr. President, for your service. Thank you for the good things you did while you were in office that we agree with. And we now need to move on.
What does that mean? Why do we have to say those things? Chris Christie doesn't have some insight into the election process or these legal challenges that the rest of us don't. So far, they haven't worked. I mean, we can all observe the reality. We can all see what's happening. So far, Giuliani's team has not been able to get any victories. That is true. These are facts. And we're not going to become CNN here on the right. We're not going to live in a delusion and lie to people for ratings or for anything else. But there's also some time left here. There are these legal challenges that are continuing. Let's see what happens. If they're all so silly, if they're all so irrelevant or baseless, fine. People bring lawsuits and they get shot down all the time. The courts, in a sense, are a purification system for legal ideas. Now, they don't always get it right either, which we have to also keep in mind. But so you bring it forward, you say, this is our legal theory. And if it is incorrect or if it doesn't work, then you go beyond that. You move beyond it. That's where we are. We will accept the results of this election if, in fact, we get through everything that we've got. And the result is the result. There is no alternative. The people that are out there saying that we're going to come up with some, Texas is going to become its own state or something else. They're just appealing to emotion. And I think at some level it becomes disrespectful of conservative audiences and the people that are on our side politically to tell them what is, because there's a lot of that going on right now. People are saying what they know isn't true, but they know that the audience wants to hear. And they hope that feeling will just translate later on when the people that are saying things right now that maybe aren't not going to the Chris Christie length of making fun of the lawsuits and something that's absurd. But I really believe that I have an obligation to tell you that our challenge so far has not gone well. Our legal challenges have not gone well for this election. Do I know that there were irregularities in cheating this election? Absolutely. Do I know that this stinks to high heaven and it's just a disgrace and it feels like this whole thing was just wrong? Yes. But do I also know that there's no alternative system that we have in place to do something other than what we're doing right now, and that at the end of it we may actually lose? Yes. Yes. And I've known this for a while now, and I've tried to stay back. People got mad at me because I was saying, I think I said on Sarah Carter's podcast a couple of weeks ago, we got about a 5 to 10% chance of really turning this thing around and sending it to the states or having a different, again, legal process where that could occur. And I got a lot of heat for that. That was just honest. And I was right. I mean, if you're doing the odds, if you look at this, you look at the number of legal cases, the number of states, the margin of victory, it's a long shot. And even the people involved in the legal challenge, I'll tell you, They'll tell you it's a long shot behind closed doors. So, now it's a question of how we process this and how we get ready for the fight going forward as this makes its way, as this continues on to the final stages here. I mean, otherwise, someone tell me what they really think the alternative is going to be. There's not going to be a secession movement. It's not going to happen. There's not going to be a rejection of our entire process. We're not going to all move to, Polynesia. Okay, it's not going to happen. So let's look at what is happening and let's fight these cheaters and scoundrels and statists and authoritarians together with everything we've got. Let's win in Georgia. Don't need to be, snide about that. I mean, this is the clip I actually meant to play. Here's Chris Christie just being kind of nasty about this whole thing. Play 10.
Well, listen, the legal theory put forward by his legal team and by the president is an absurdity. And the reason why the Supreme Court didn't take it is because it's an absurd idea to think that any state or any number of states, no matter how good they are, can challenge another state's right to run the election as they see fit. And also, there's no evidence, as I've been saying since election night. Show us the evidence. And what's gotten even worse, though, Martha, I think, is the attacks by the president on good, hardworking, decent Republican governors.
Good, hardworking, decent Republican governors. Look, there's no need to say that the legal theory is absurd. There's a need to track down everything we're doing here, look at everything that's going on, and come to a final determination about where we are and what we can do at this stage. I'm as upset about this as anybody else. It's a kick in the face. Again, I think that the Sean Parnell case, maybe that is the legal miracle that sets all this right, or at least gets that going. Maybe we can finally prove in a way that a court will uphold that Dominion voting systems are problematic or are too easy to be messed with. But in the meantime, let's all just band together. We know what we're fighting for. We know what our team's all about. And we will get through this. We will get through this, and we will get to bigger victories in the future. It's going to happen. Keep the faith. It's going to be a different holiday season. There are a lot of restrictions in place, harder to see people. Perhaps you're not going to be with those relatives, friends, family that you usually see this time of year, but you can still reach out, tell them that you're thinking about them, send them some joy, and really just do something nice for the people that matter to you that you may not be able to spend time with this holiday season with Bloomsy Box. I've got Bloomsy Box flowers at home right now. They're so beautiful. They come fresh picked from the farm, and they really last because they get them to you so quickly. You can set it up so you get a subscription, or you can go with just a one-time purchase. But I really recommend the subscription. I've got one now for my family. It's going to them, and it's so great to see the smile it brings to their face, especially when I turn on the Zoom, and I can see they love it. All you have to do is go to bloomsybox.com, use the promo code BUCK. That'll get you a 15% off your next purchase, okay? bloomsybox.com, BLOOMSY box.com. Promo code BUCK. That'll get you 15% off your next purchase. Indoor dining in NYC shut down. This is likely to happen in other places across the country as well. I've got my friend Joe Borelli, who is a city councilman here in New York City and a rare Republican on the New York City Council, joining us to talk about how this is going. Joe, great to have you on.
Always good to be here.
How's it looking right now, my friend? I mean, I saw over the weekend these outdoor structures that they've built in New York City. I know they have them in other places too. Are the outdoor but kind of indoor structures going to still be able to operate, but normal interior restaurant dining is shut down? Is that the way this works?
Yeah, which makes sense. So the outdoor, indoor, inside, outside, you could still do that with the exception of the nor'easter that's going to blow in here over the next few days. So even that'll be out the window for these poor people who are struggling with small business restaurants in New York City. Buck, you are a history guy. And if we played a little trivia right now, I would ask you to look back in all your knowledge to find one example of a president or governor or mayor who said we're going to enact a policy which is financially harmful to his own or her own citizens, and then simultaneously tout statistics that prove that policy will be ineffective at any rate. And that's what we had on Friday with Governor Cuomo. He said we're shutting down dining. At the same time, he told us the statistics show dining is not causing nearly any COVID around New York State or New York City.
That's amazing to me because when we look at this now, the data seems to suggest that the transmission is mostly happening in homes. But are they not able to figure out, well, if it's not really happening in restaurants and dining, and most of the spread as aggregate numbers go is in the home, where is the initial spread to the let's say head of household or whoever brings it into the home? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think this contact tracing idea has been flawed from the very beginning. I mean, this was the reason given as why we couldn't open up restaurants and dining and gyms, et cetera, in the first place. And then when we finally get the data, we're not really learning all that much. In fact, we're learning very little, right? If there was some data to indicate that 25, 30, 40% of cases were coming from restaurants, we could probably act on that. And we could probably all agree that maybe we do have to take some measures and make some considerations. But we're just not. The fact that we're just saying 70-something% are coming from the home where people can do whatever they want and then leaving it up to God to do the rest, it's unfair how that translates into, well, we might have to have another shutdown of restaurants, dining, gyms, et cetera.
Where are we on gyms at NYC? Because that is one, if they shut down the gyms, I don't know, man. I'm going to be out there protesting in the nor'easter in the streets because to me, that just means everyone is more depressed, less healthy, and they've had almost no spread in gyms too, which might be a shock to people.
Well, it's funny you asked. I was about to flex for you in my athletic wear today. So gyms were allowed to reopen on Monday. They were closed the week prior. And now the mayor and governor, though, announced that New York City might have to go to a complete lockdown soon so that those would once again be closed. So if you're following along, and you get the impression that I really couldn't even tell you whether gyms will be open in another week or two, it's because even I, as an elected official in New York City, can not even fathom whether gyms will be open a week from today. But they're open today.
Who are the people that are supposed to be the experts that are making these decisions, or rather that are pushing these decisions, the advisors at the local level? Because I feel like they've gotten a lot wrong, Joe.
No, it's the governor. It's the governor and it's politics. It's not necessarily the health people. They're just the rubber stamps. Look, I mean, we have indoor dining closed now in Manhattan. Manhattan has a positivity rate of 2.5%. The statewide positivity rate is 5%, meaning the rate in Manhattan is half that of everywhere else in the state, meaning it's double as good, to mince the numbers. And yet Manhattan will have closed indoor dining, but Chemung County in upstate New York will allow indoor dining where coronavirus is, at least according to their data, running more rampant. Science.
Joe, what's going to happen? We've only got about a minute, but what's going to happen to small businesses in this city? Is there going to be some bailout program for them?
No, I mean, the governor could tomorrow authorize a deferment or an elimination of the state's quarterly income tax payments that businesses are required to remit. And that amounts to, just 8% of what their register would be over the past 3 months. But that's a grant. I mean, treat it as a grant. Give these people back their money. Let them hold on to it. Let them pay their employees. Let them pay the rent, whatever they got to do, so that hopefully in quarters 1, 2, 3, and 4 of 2021, they're still in business to keep paying the taxes.
I'm worried that a lot of my favorite places and that are, a big reason why people live in New York City is because of that, the bar where you met your fiance, the restaurant where you celebrated your first promotion. It's such a part of our culture and our life here. I think they're just going to be decimated. I think it's going to be a bloodbath for these small businesses, and that's just it's really sad. But we'll keep the faith, Joe. Hopefully, we got better days ahead. Joe Borelli of the New York City Council. Joe, thanks for joining, man. Always good to talk to you.
You too. Thank you.
I recently got a crash course in home title theft, and this is a crime that you better make sure doesn't happen to you because it goes after your most valuable asset, your home. Here's how it works. The bad guys, cyber thieves, they find your home's title online. Then they use a quitclaim deed to kick you off, put themselves on, and then they start taking out loans against the equity in your home. You often won't find out about this until a payment demand is received in the mail or perhaps even a foreclosure notice. You have to go with the experts I trust to create a virtual barrier around your home's title with Home Title Lock. All you have to do is go to HomeTitleLock.com, use the promo code RADIO. That will get you 30 free days of protection, and you can check online to see if you're a victim of this crime and don't even know it yet. That's HomeTitleLock.com, promo code RADIO, 30 free days of protection. Create a virtual barrier around your home's title, and you can check at HomeTitleLock.com to see if you're a victim of this crime and don't even know it yet. Check it out today.
There's a case to be made that this will actually strengthen Trump and his base. And here's why. At least for now, the president has had some constraints on him as president. He can't do things that are totally off the charts. There are still people and lawyers around him who tell him, you can't do that, sir. You can't fire this guy. You shouldn't do that. When he leaves, and if he's right about creating his own media empire and a digital platform and declaring simultaneously that he's the candidate in 2024, what you now have is a totally unchecked actor all over the media with 70 million votes of people who will follow him. And, 100 million or whatever he's got on Twitter following him. He becomes unchecked, and his people, in the eyes of his base, he becomes the hero, the wronged hero who must be avenged. This outrage must be avenged. He's our guy. And so add to it the QAnon folks who have been elected to Congress, right? And you can see a recipe where this doesn't go away. This lunacy becomes embedded in our society and our culture.
There you have a Russia collusion truther who was a former senior FBI guy. I think he was the deputy assistant or something. I mean, he was deputy director. I don't know. He had some senior FBI title. Who knows? But he was a senior guy at the FBI who's telling you that you need to be on guard here. You need to be careful because there could be this whole narrative out there of a stolen election and that Trump, even if he's not president, will be dangerous. And, I think that they're forgetting that we all went through 4 years of Russia collusion lies and attacks and smears. And they're going to have a really tough time dealing with a Donald Trump. If he's not president, they're going to have a difficult time fighting through the way that Trump and his movement will be able to be a problem for their narrative. But beyond that, I also note that we're all supposed to be so worried. We were worried he wasn't going to accept a loss. Now you got this guy's a moron, Figliuzzi. I mean, he goes on MSNBC. The guy's a complete jackass. The FBI and the CIA brands are irrevocably, but the FBI and CIA brands are deeply damaged as a result of what's going on here. Damaged beyond repair, I think. And I'm somebody who, I'd like to think the CIA is well regarded. It's really not anymore because of these senior officials from these agencies who go out and act like partisan morons. But there was violence this weekend. This guy's so worried about what's going to happen. Violence this weekend. More Biden voters, Democrats, Antifa, attacking Trump supporters in D.C. It's not covered in the media. It doesn't even get a mention. The lunacy of the left that's going on in Seattle right now and in Portland and in D.C. over the weekend, they don't even think of it as a news story. I mean, they really are like the Soviet media. They're Pravda circa 1958 or something. I mean, it's appalling what they're willing to lie about and cover up. How does China influence our politics? We heard so much about Russian influence in the election in 2016. It was greatly exaggerated, as you know, by the media because they used it as a weapon against Trump. But now we're starting to wake up to the reality of pervasive, widespread, and incredibly powerful Chinese Communist Party influence operations. And they're following our politics closely and trying to direct political outcomes in this country. We've got someone joining now who can speak very much to this issue. Stephen Yates is with us now. He is the principal of DC International Advisory, and he's formerly Deputy National Security Advisor to Vice President Dick Cheney under the Bush administration. Steve, great to have you.
Thank you, Buck. It's wonderful to join you.
And Steve's also a Mandarin speaker, so he's been handling this issue and looking at it for a very long time. Stephen, how does China, walk us through this? Give us a kind of overview brief of what we're seeing now and how China in recent years has tried to influence American politics.
Well, Buck, I'll give a quick version of it. This is something that's been going on a long time. It's escalated, it's become more sophisticated, and it's been technologized, and all the weapons are at the hands of the Communist Party of China at this point. But if people might remember, but it seems ancient history, that there were influence operations that hit the public in the 1990s. There were fundraising scandals that came up during the Clinton administration. Congress had a full-scale national security report done under the leadership of Chris Cox that, among other things, gave warnings about this. But the Chinese used to use access to their markets as leverage to try to get more favorable policies from Americans. So the old argument was China's a developing country. We give them a break here or there and treat them like a developing country, sort of like a kid at the kids' table, but with the potential to come to the big tables. Let's give them a break and go ahead and give them special access, and they'll grow into their role of being a responsible partner of ours. Over time, they've gone from just giving money to campaigns, which got them in trouble in the 1990s, to then they found out, well, what if we work with churches and chambers of commerce? In other words, let's influence the influencers. And it got to, from corporate boardrooms to evangelical associations, the Catholic Church itself, other kinds of civic organizations, whether it's sister cities. They just expanded this outreach effort, and they completely co-opted a lot of our major universities. So universities are businesses. I think that they should be treated more like businesses if education is only a small fraction of their revenue and business model. And what they've done is they make it so that foreign exchange students, research programs are completely dependent on the good graces of the Communist Party of China to have all of this money that they live on. So they become too big to fail in a way that you can't criticize China. We can't question government policy towards China, or they'll pull the red carpet out from under our feet. So that's been growing over decades. What's much, much more pronounced now is their role in big tech, big media, big entertainment, big sports, all other elements of the culture war. They seem to have snuck in and taken a monopoly control over just in recent years.
Speaking of Steve Yates, he is the CEO of DC International Advisory and a former senior national security official under the Bush administration. Stephen, tell us about, you mentioned the big tech influence, and we're already seeing a lot of problems on the right from American big tech companies involved in censorship. How does China try to leverage big tech to direct American politics or get involved in our political conversations?
Well, in some ways, it's too easy for them. If you want the greatest freedom-free zone to test facial recognition, artificial intelligence, ways to monitor and control and influence people, China is the greatest sort of experimental farm you could go to try to figure out how applied technology can be used to manipulate and control people. And so if you're in the business of doing that in advertising, you might have a perverse interest in trying to cooperate with China. But the Chinese have all kinds of tentacles back in. They can do it by direct investment. They can do it by way of engineers that are exceedingly well trained but willing to work at a slightly lower rate. And even if we just look at recent controversies about who are the fact checkers in big tech today that are determining that a warning label needs to go onto the @real Donald Trump account, in many cases, those are farmed out to Chinese fact checker farms. And so they're tied in so many different ways that people wouldn't even think about it.
Wait, hold on a second. Just so I'm clear, Steve, you're telling me that some of the fact checking of American, because I've been fact checked. I mean, I've personally been subjected to this in the last few weeks. Some of the fact checking and accompanying censorship that's happening in America around American tech companies preventing Americans from sharing ideas. We're being fact checked by Chinese?
By Chinese people and Chinese artificial intelligence. It's been outsourced. I mean, the scale of the operation to try to monitor the amount of traffic, as we would say, on Twitter, that's bigger than most American companies can really reasonably do. And plus, we're talking about international traffic. Things can bounce all over the place and still be about the American election or political process. And so the Chinese Communist Party and their invested outfits, they make themselves available to help out. when needed on things like this. But very plausibly, you or anyone else that has a sizable audience has been fact checked by someone who's not even an American.
Oh my gosh, almost makes me think that it'd be better to have lib MSNBC watchers. At least they feel like there might be some eventual accountability for what they're doing. But if you're talking about outsourcing,
there's a
this
chance
stuff
you
to
could
China,
cross paths with them at least.
Yeah, exactly. At least I could find out what the outfit is and maybe try to get some redress. We're speaking to Steve Yates. He is the CEO of DC International Advisory. He's a China policy expert. Steve, tell everyone listening this about the role that China, the relationship and role that China has to the U.S. agricultural industry and how they've tried to leverage that in recent years. And you have some particular knowledge of this as a guy who ran for lieutenant governor in Idaho.
Yeah. Well, one of the more famous examples on the presidential level has been the influence they've tried to exert in Iowa. And so there has been a former governor of Iowa that was President Trump's ambassador to China, Branstad. And so the Chinese would offer up access to their consumers for all of our wonderful farm products. And if they took kind of a controlling share of, say, corn in one state or wheat in another or hay in other places, they can have tremendous political impact by saying, whoa, don't talk about going to Taiwan, or don't support your elected members on these tough on China policies, or I'm so sorry, we might not be able to buy the next $1 billion worth of your product for the coming season. So sorry. So they've been able to exercise that influence. For me personally, in the state of Idaho, there's a lot of ag exports that go to China, but it's people who then associate with the Chinese or use the China angle that can attack you. And so since I have a name in Chinese and people have known me through the media in Chinese language, a whole bunch of fake accounts can start sending criticisms, making fake videos, and they get picked up in the American press. And they don't know, we don't have sufficient fact checkers in some part of rural America, and they don't know what's going on. They say I'm an agent of China. And anyone who's ever known me from the 1990s until now, there probably isn't anyone who has a longer record of being a pain in the backside of the Communist Party than I have. But it just takes a few fake accounts and build a fake audience. And that Twitter farm goes and the Facebook farm goes. And it looks like there's hundreds of people that don't like this Mr. Yates from Idaho because he's tough on China.
Stephen, what should we do about this? Do you think that there's a recognition of how important, powerful, and nefarious Chinese influence is, Chinese Communist Party influence is in the United States, that there's enough willingness to do something? And if that is the case, and I'm emphasizing the if, what should be done?
Well, I think the single most potent force we have in America right now is the Trump movement. It's something that can earn coverage. It can influence people who are active in multiple states. And that's what it's going to take. It's going to take things in state legislatures, in addition to Congress and the federal government. People have to forget that the federal government isn't going to be our savior. We're going to have to save ourselves from the ground up. And they're going to have to put pressure on universities. They're going to have to put pressure on the patterns of trade that our states engage in. And that's going to be much, much more effective than trying to wait for a federal response. But recognizing that free trip that those college kids got to go to China, it's going to come with some strings. That great welcome mat you got to promise to buy all these crops. All this group of visitors that was going to prop up your resort or your hotel or something like that, that can be taken away as easily as it's given, and it's going to come with strings attached. I think Secretary Pompeo has been an historic Secretary of State in this regard, the most candid in terms of talking to the world, but also talking to Americans about what the nature and scope of this challenge has been. And we're just at the very beginning of having that real conversation. And it seems like nothing, but in my 30 years of working on this topic, this is the first we've even made headway in having that more honest conversation. And it just needs to continue. Our allies are getting hit by the Chinese too, the Brits. The Australians have had some ugly political attacks on them by the Chinese. And so more of the world is coming around to, this isn't Donald Trump, the person, versus big bad China. This is China declaring war on civilization as we know it, freedom as we've known it. And sadly, they've got enablers in our own polity, and we've got to get wise. And I think this election experience has awakened more Americans to roll this boulder forward in the right way, I hope.
Before we let you go, the story that broke about all these Chinese Communist Party members based on this leaked list, it was named, and particularly UK, major international United Kingdom based, British companies. Steve, what did you make of that? I mean, it was, think of a company, Rolls Royce. I mean, think of these British companies that people all know off the top of their head. They've hired and in some cases put in pretty sensitive positions, not just Chinese workers, which is a different thing, active members of the Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, so the target of corporate leaders and influencers has been something that a lot of nefarious players around the world have gone to, and the Chinese have made a big play for that. And the corporate boards and corporate leadership that allows these people in either are really ignorant to let these people into the barn, or they're in on the joke. And what they're trying to do is to buy access to the ever elusive billion-plus Chinese market by allowing these folks into corporate boardrooms and influential positions. What happens most of the time, though, is technology and talent and other gets stolen away from them, and a competitor rises up in China. And they need to learn this sad lesson. But this has happened in many corporations, in many political organizations. The UK story can easily be replicated in a lot of America. We know that members of the Senate and House intelligence communities have been personally compromised by staffers being on their roles for many years, and an FBI briefing ends that tenure, but the damage is done. That's been done in corporations, it's been done in Congress, it's been done in campaigns, and everyone needs to get wiser about how to vet this.
Stephen Yates, CEO of DC International Advisory. You can follow him on Twitter. Steve, great to have you, man. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Take care, Buck.